What's going on, guys? This is the Edge DFS. We're talking showdown, Rams versus Buccaneers for Monday Night Football. My name is Tyson Smith. Ellie Hernandez, what's going on, man? How you doing? How was your Sunday lineups today?
Oh man, I was feeling great. But for some dumbass reason, I decided to go heavy on Joe Burrow, and that didn't work out too well for me. I was starting off well, man, but ended up not finishing too great. So, it is what it is. I probably shouldn't have gone all in on one guy, but hell, it was worth it. I heard the Millie Maker had Taysom Hill at quarterback.
Of course.
I think I just overthought it. So next week it's sometimes you just gotta take the free square.
Well, I went 80% PJ Walker, so, just close the laptop and move on. So we're recording this on Sunday night. This is, what are we, in the third quarter of our KC versus Las Vegas game? Pretty interesting game so far. But we're going to just get right into this matchup here. So let's move over to our Vegas lines here. We got the Rams in Tampa Bay. Both of these teams have pretty good records. Rams are competing for first place. Tampa Bay is competing as well. Minus 221 for Tampa Bay. That's a 48 total, and it's a 4.5 spread in favor of Tampa Bay. What do you think about this line here? Do you think the Rams deserve a little more credit? I mean, they're both streaky teams. Like any of these teams, either of these teams can come out and just absolutely bomb this slate. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting game, man. I think Tampa Bay is a really good team. Their defense, they're great at stopping the run. So, I think that's going to be an interesting part of this game. But, I think you're right, man. I don't think the Rams are getting enough love. I mean, they are 6-3. They are playing in the NFL's toughest division. And, they've been competitive. Their defense is what's been getting better over the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Right. They were able to shut down Seattle. So, I'm thinking there might be a little bit more opportunity to go a little bit more balanced builds in this.
Yeah.
Because it seems based on the line that we might have ownership trending heavier towards Tampa Bay. So
yeah,
I think it's going to be an interesting one for sure.
I mean, the Rams came out and absolutely dominated against Seattle last week. They blew the roof off of that team. So it's kind of interesting. I know that the division rivals, sometimes it doesn't necessarily, you can't judge them for something like that in that performance, but it's hard to ignore against a good Seahawks team how well they did and how well they shut down that offense. With the Bucs last week, they came out and won that game against the Panthers with Teddy Bridgewater in. I think they scored over 40 points, so they did pretty well. That was the Ronald Jones 98-yard touchdown last week. So they're looking
ridiculous.
Yeah, so they're looking pretty good, and it's really interesting. The whole Ronald Jones versus Leonard Fournette debate. Fournette was trending up. He was one of the most popular guys on the slate a couple showdown slates ago, and now Ronald Jones is trending up, mainly because of that run, obviously, but he's been getting a bulk of the carries. So it's really interesting, this game. Anything that pops out to you narrative-wise, or is there anything else that you're going into this just from the football side of things that sticks out in this matchup?
Yeah. Bruce Arians has some experience against the Rams. I don't know if it was when Sean McVay was head coach. I think it was 1 year, and that was the year.
Yeah, it was.
1 or 2 years. So, I think this is going to be an interesting game. You got two of the better offensive minds in football going up against each other with two defenses that are actually pretty good. So, I think it's going to just be a fun game in general. But I like Ronald Jones a lot too. I know a lot of people are kind of going to say, well, if you take back that 98-yard run, you take it back, he still has 96 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to get some recency bias with people going to him and some that are just talking shit. So I'm curious to see where his ownership projections start coming in at. But I think he's going to be a very interesting piece of this slate.
Let's actually, there are no injuries. Notable injuries this week. There's I think it's the left guard for the Buccaneers is going to be out for a concussion protocol. So I don't know how much that really affects things. Bruce Arians in his press conference, he was getting a ton of questions about that. So I'm guessing, this particular offensive lineman is relatively good. I off the top of my head, I don't know his name, but I don't pay attention to offensive linemen's names. I don't know about you, but there's something to think about. There's really no other injuries of note, which is pretty nice because we don't really have to wait on anything, and unless something pops up last minute, we can just start thinking about our builds now. We don't have to wait until 3 or 4 Pacific time to really get into it. So let's just let's get into the breakdown here, man. How do you feel about that? You want to start this shit?
Let's do it, dude.
Break it down.
All right. I can't help it. Okay, so let's get into quarterbacks here. We're going to move over to Fantasy Cruncher here. We got Tom Brady at $11K. Not a bad price for Tom, it really isn't. You got Jared Goff at $9,800. It's a pretty damn good price for him too. Anything under $10K is, to me, that's the Sam Darnold range, especially under 9.5. So Jared Goff is hovering in a pretty nice area, and actually, let's look at his price history here. So he last showdown slate, he was at $12K. So he's coming down in price. So it's something worth noting at $9,800. It could just be DraftKings pricing him down, just to make this slate work. But the pricing in the slate is really easy compared to what we were dealing with like tonight with the Chiefs versus the Raiders. That was pretty difficult to build. So what are your first thoughts on this? Looks like they're projecting pretty close to each other as far as median points. How do you handle, Tom Brady versus Jared Goff in what could be a potential shootout? I know the Vegas line's a little bit lower. It's 48, so it's like 10 points lower or 9 points lower than the game we're dealing with tonight. So how do you handle this?
I think it's real interesting. I want to try and get as many lineups with both these guys in there as possible. And I don't want to. I'm not going to come with any earth-shattering analysis here. Tom Brady's probably going to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and there's a good shot that Jared Goff goes for 275 and 2+, right? So I think both quarterbacks are in a great position here. I think Jared Goff is fairly nicely priced, and Tom Brady isn't egregiously priced either. So I don't think you're going to have to work too hard to get both these guys in your lineups.
Yeah.
Now, there's one thing interesting that I'll be paying a lot of attention to. It's just the initial ownership projections for Jared Goff. Based on kind of where the line's at, I kind of anticipate his captain ownership to come in a little lower than we would anticipate. So if he starts coming in around like 7, 8, 9%, I might have some interest in him at captain, just because he is priced low enough that you're not getting too crazy by doing it. And again, I fully anticipate Tom Brady is going to be very much the captain of choice at $11K.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, obviously, we didn't do our typical ownership breakdown. There's really no ownership to go into, but I mean, it's pretty easy to see that Tom Brady is probably going to be the highest owned, both in flex and in captain, and then from there, it's going to be relatively spread out. I think, we'll get into that when we get into each position. You look at Tom Brady last week; he threw for 340 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Pretty good. He's been hot and cold. He had his New Orleans debacle a couple weeks ago. That was week 9. We covered, we had a breakdown video about that. They lost 38-3. It was like 28-0 at half. It got out of hand real quick. And look, I think the Saints are better than with Drew Brees. I think they're slightly better than Tampa Bay, but I don't think they're 38-3 better. I think the game just got out of hand. And, it is what it is. When it comes to Tom Brady beating up on Carolina 46-23, that was not a surprise, obviously. And he's going to jump back from a bad game. So I anticipate, like you said, 300-plus yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns, maybe a rushing touchdown here or there. He's spread out across this year. He's got three quarterback sneak touchdowns. So that's kind of interesting, something to keep an eye on. If you're thinking about captain, that's one thing that will really help you there if he does sneak one in. I just think, if you watch this show, you know that we usually fade these quarterbacks at captain unless they're coming in under owned like a Derek Carr or something like that. So Jared Goff, what are your thoughts on Jared Goff this week? It's a relatively, it's not like a difficult matchup for him, I don't think, but I think the rush defense for the Bucs is pretty impressive, and it's going to be tough for them to establish the run. So from there, getting that passing game going is going to be a little bit more difficult if they have no run game.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about it. There's been some good secondary play coming in from the Tampa Bay defense, but I don't know how many times they've really had to deal with weapons like Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and even Josh Reynolds from time to time. I understand Jared Goff. He can be pretty inefficient and he can be pretty inconsistent, but I don't see that happening tomorrow night. I think he's in a great spot. And you're right on. It's going to be difficult for him because he's going to have to essentially establish the offense from the get-go, because I don't know how this running attack is going to do against the Todd Bowles defense.
Yeah.
But I think that is going to allow Sean McVay to be a little bit more creative. And when the Rams are kind of being creative on the offensive side of the ball, they seem to have more fun and perform better. So, I don't expect him to struggle all that much. I still see him going for 275, 2 touchdowns easy.
Yeah.
And he has decent rushing upside as well. So if he starts to run into positions where, they're committing to the pass, and he does have the ability to escape the pocket, pick up another, 30, 40 yards on the ground, and he can probably rush one in for a touchdown as well. So I think he's in a great spot. I'm not too concerned about him. There's a good chance that he's one of the top performers on the slate.
Yeah.
Again, I'm never comfortable saying something like that about Goff because I'm not a fan. I'm not a huge fan of the guy.
Yeah.
But I think he's a potential solid play tomorrow night.
If you look at his recent fantasy point outcomes here, nothing too impressive, nothing to write home about. In fact, the entire season, he's only gone over 23 points 3 times. He's only hit 30 once this year. So it could be a combination of spreading the ball around quite a bit, not getting as many touchdown passes as he needs. He's only hit that 3 touchdown pass mark once this year. And he's thrown 6 interceptions as well. So, he's had 2 rushing touchdowns. And in the 2 weeks where he had his best outputs, those touchdowns happened in those weeks. So it's something interesting. If he ends up with 22, 23 fantasy points in a game like this, he's just most likely going to be in the optimal. So, if this particular game was part of an 11-game slate, I don't think you'd really want to look at Jared Goff. But because it's Showdown, you got to really, really zoom in and figure out, okay, what is it going to take for him not to be in the winning lineup? And I just don't see it. I mean, unless there's a lot of rushing attack from the Rams, which I don't see happening at all, considering they have 3 running backs. None of them are starters, in my opinion. They're just all a bunch of 3 pretty basic running backs. The only way I see him not getting in this is if he breaks his leg in the first quarter, which knock on wood, I hope that doesn't happen. But I think you got to get both of these guys in, and or you can rotate one out. You can set a rule or however you want to do it. But if I have 80+% of both of these guys, it's fine. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of wide receivers that you're going to need to deal with getting into your lineups. They're all pretty high priced. But if you choose a middle of the road captain, you'll probably be able to fit a lot of those wide receivers and the quarterbacks in as well. So let's move over to running back. Let's move over to the Rams running backs. Let's talk about this shit show. You've got Darrell Henderson at 5,800. You got Malcolm Brown at 5,400, and you got Cam Akers at 2,800. I just want nothing to do with this. They're all spread out. Their projections are spread out. There's probably like a 17 or 18 point projection combined for all 3 of these guys, and they're pretty evenly spread out. It looks like Darrell Henderson is probably going to come in the most owned, but it's just. What do you think about this, man? Do you have a clear take on this? Because I sure as hell don't.
Yeah, I have a pretty strong take here. I don't give a shit about any of these guys. I probably won't have any. If I am going to be looking at any one of these guys, it's going to be Malcolm Brown because he's got the most potential to get involved in the pass game. I don't think Darrell Henderson will, and Cam Akers is not going to be really an integral part of the offense.
Yeah.
And we've seen that pretty much consistently all year. But about 4 weeks ago, he went really downward on the downward
Yeah,
trend.
I want nothing to do with Cam Akers, bro, at all.
Yeah, but I expect Darrell Henderson to get a little bit of chalk around him at 5,800 and
Yeah.
being technically the number one guy. But Malcolm Brown's just as likely to have a 3 touchdown performance just out of nowhere. So
Well, recency bias as well. Last week he scored 2 touchdowns. He had a couple of receptions. So he had a 20-point fantasy output. So that could be one of these things where that's possibly an outlier performance. I'm gonna say it is, and that boosts up his average fantasy points per game. So people look at that kind of shit, and it doesn't really mean anything. So in my opinion, I usually, like, if you watch these shows in the past, I love Malcolm Brown back when he was at 2,400. That's the price. That's around the price, or even 3,000. That's probably the price for him. At 5,400, he's overpriced in my opinion. I'd rather go with some of these wide receiver options instead. So if you look at
exactly.
So if you look at the Rams, if you just want to look at last week, how the snaps went down. Malcolm Brown was at 42% of the snaps. Darrell Henderson was at 34% of the snaps, and Cam Akers was at 27%. It's a shit show. I don't know. Obviously Darrell Henderson's going to get the start. But I think they just go with the hot hand, or I think it's a game script thing. If they script out their first 15 plays with Henderson in and it's not working, then maybe they put in Brown. I legit just don't know. Even in week 8, Malcolm Brown had 57% of the snaps. Darrell Henderson had 20. Cam Akers had 23%. So the starter is trending down. It seems like Malcolm Brown is actually trending up. So look, if we get some positive news about Malcolm Brown possibly starting, or the coach is talking about he wants to get an X amount of snaps with him in, then maybe we change our mind. But right now, if they're splitting it, 40, 30, 20, or 40, 30, 30, whatever, I just want nothing to do with these guys. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I look, man. I'm a strong fade on all these guys. Again, to your point, Malcolm Brown's still too expensive given his just given his overall production. But if I have to play one of these guys, I guess I would play Malcolm Brown over any of them.
Yeah, and it just depends on your game script. If you really think that the Rams can be leading in this game, then maybe there's more of an opportunity for Darrell Henderson to get some garbage time snaps, run the ball, get an extra 30 or 40 yards on the ground, just wasting some clock. I just don't see the Rams being up enough to where they're going to be milking the clock. I think it's going to be more of a shootout, like a lower scoring shootout where teams are trading possessions back and forth. And if that's the case, I think Malcolm Brown is the way to go. But I'm not going to have a lot of any of these guys, in my opinion. So let's move over.
Exactly.
Let's move over to another muddy situation. I mean, it's becoming a little bit more clear, but I think recency bias is going to really push things in a way that kind of scares me. With Ronald Jones being at 8,800. Very interesting because the last showdown slate with him, he was, what was he at against New Orleans? He was 6,600, and he was much lower owned than Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette he had a good week, and then all of a sudden, obviously in that game, they ran the ball for an NFL record low of like 5 attempts, so no one really got any stats in that game. So it's hard to tell. But the way it was trending up was that Fournette was getting more opportunity, more snaps, and Ronald Jones was sort of in the doghouse potentially because of his fumbles and for whatever reason. Right now, Leonard Fournette is at 4,400. He's half the price. I just don't see that. I don't understand that at all. His value, I mean, the projections are coming in close. They're like a 3-point difference, and his value is much greater. So how are you handling the situation here? I know Ronald Jones at 8,800. I just don't see how you can get any of them at captain on this slate. That's just my opinion. What do you think?
Oh man, I love him at captain. I understand there's going to be a lot of recency bias and people are going to be high on him just because of the performance output last week. But Bruce Arians, he understands that his team is not going to win unless they run the ball 20 times, and I think that they've been trying to put him into that workhorse role all year, and I really think that was kind of a breakout game for him. There is no reason why, given the changes that he's made to his size and just his ability to run the ball this season, there's no reason he can't be a consistent back like that. You take away that one 98-yard touchdown run, and again, he's still sitting at 96 yards and a touchdown. So what did he go for? Like 190?
Well, he went for 192 and one touchdown. So he in that one run. He's
still at 100 yards.
In that one run, he got more than double his output in that one run. So
sure, and yeah, 15 fantasy points on one run isn't, it's nothing to gawk at. But again, I mean, you're still just a few yards short of the 100-yard bonus, and again, one or two more attempts, and you're on the goal line, and you're looking at a touchdown. Yeah. But I love Ronald Jones, and in this kind of game, it doesn't hurt my plans to really go Ronald Jones and a piece or two on the Bucs offense, and then just stack up with Goff, Woods, Kupp, or whoever I can get. So I don't think it hurts any of my game scripts throwing these guys in there. Now, Leonard Fournette, I agree with you on his pricing. I don't think he should be 4,400. I think he should be closer. Him and Malcolm Brown should be at least swapped for this slate.
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette's getting run in the pass game, which is a dimension that he's never had. So I definitely think he has a decent amount of upside. And given him and his projection isn't that different from Ronald Jones from a fantasy points perspective.
Yeah.
So I think he's a solid play. I'll have a decent amount of him. I don't have a problem having both of these running backs in tomorrow's slate, especially kind of
in the same lineup too.
Yeah, I mean, look, dude, I think the wide receiver position is getting a little bit more murky for Tampa Bay, and if they can run the ball, I think they're going to continue to run the ball. And they really, if we're all being honest, we all want to see that game where Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette both rush for 100. So,
yeah, right.
I want to see it happen. I don't think Bruce Arians is shy to do that. So I love both these guys. I'm a lot higher on Ronald Jones in captain than you, but Leonard Fournette's a valuable play. I think he's even a pretty solid captain if you want to get crazy.
Oh, yeah. I think he's trending down as far as the public, how they see Leonard Fournette, even though it's been two bad games. One of those games was because of game script, and the other was because the other guy had a hot hand. That was just simply what it was. If you look at last week, Ronald Jones had 51% of the snaps, Leonard Fournette had 38%. The week before, Fournette had 67% and Ronald Jones had 32%. The week before that, it was 73% Leonard Fournette and 25% Ronald Jones. So it's been and even on the season, it's right around 46% for each of them. Fournette has 45 and Ronald Jones has 47% of the snaps. So if you're just looking at it from a snaps from how long these guys are actually on the field and how often they're on the field, it was going up for Fournette, and then it sort of just switched. I don't know how or why. I just think it could be a hot hand thing. So, in my opinion, I would not be surprised if Ronald Jones ended up with 35-40% of the snaps next week, while Leonard Fournette was getting goal line carries and shit. That's why this is very difficult to figure out. And I'm just more likely to spread it out and not just go in on one guy, because if I do, my night's over because of a coach doesn't like a guy or he has a certain outlook on the game plan. So that's just my opinion on things. Anything to add to this? Actually, by the way, real quick, if Ronald Jones is over 40% owned, I'm just probably gonna get 10% or less of him. That's just the way I'm gonna, and especially if he's 10% or more in the captain, I won't have a single lineup with him in the captain. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I really won't play anybody over 7% a captain.
Yeah.
Just it's easier to get leverage that way. So
sure.
No, I agree. So when we do get to some of these other slides, keep in mind all this stuff is subject to change depending upon ownership and line movement. So keep an eye on stuff like that. We're not going to just blindly start. I'm not going to just say, hey, Tom Brady's my guy, and then if he comes in at 100% ownership and projected for a broken ankle, like I'm not going to leave him in there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I adjust to news. But anyways, let's hop into wide receiver, I think, right?
So we're gonna go to Tampa Bay side of things here. This
Okay.
is interesting. This is really interesting. I'm actually really excited about both teams' wide receivers here for sure. So you got Mike Evans at 9,000 flat. You got Chris Godwin at 8,400 and Antonio Brown at 7,800, and then Scotty Miller at 1,400. The interesting thing, and this is just my player pool. There's, these are probably the only guys I'm comfortable playing. You got Tyler Johnson at 1,000, and then Jaden Mickens, who I would consider playing, but not really anymore. He's at 200, and I think he's on COVID protocol, so he's probably not playing anyways. So to me, you have three guys. I'm not going to get much Scotty Miller. He's pretty much been rotated out of this offense now that Antonio Brown is in. If you just look at the numbers here, the snap rate for these guys, last week Scotty Miller got 10% of the snaps. Tyler Johnson got 9. So like these guys are being phased out. You got Mike Evans at 80%, Antonio Brown at 50%, and Chris Godwin at 90%. Those are the three guys that are going to be on the field, like pretty much every play. And I don't know why Antonio Brown was only in for 50%. Maybe they had him on a snap count. Maybe he pissed somebody off. Maybe he did something wrong. I don't know. But all I know is that Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they're going to be on the field a lot. And as long as one of them doesn't get injured, they're probably going to have a relatively decent game. Now, Mike Evans, we all know about Bruce Arians sort of calling him out. He didn't call him out. Basically, he sort of half-ass called out Tom Brady about in that Saints game where he mentioned that Mike Evans was open a lot and he just didn't get targeted. I don't know if that was a jab at Tom Brady or if that was basically a jab at, I think, Lattimore or whoever was talking shit on the other team about locking down Mike Evans. So it's just something to think about here. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin's, they're near locks, but there's injury history issues, and there's just not enough. There's not enough offense to go around for these guys. So how are you handling Evans, Godwin, and Brown? And by the way, Antonio Brown's only $600 less than Godwin, which is fucking insane. I don't know how you can get any Antonio Brown in this game.
Yeah, I think out of the three, Chris Godwin's my favorite. He's always going to be my favorite. I think the guy just absolutely has 12 reception upside for 180 yards, 2-3 touchdowns. I mean, we've seen it, and I know Mike Evans can do that too, but it's a different play style. Mike Evans he's going to body you. He's a big receiver, and he's going to be physical. Chris Godwin's a little bit more finesse. He's still got some size, but he stays alive. He's he's not taking these big ass hits all game long, so I don't think there's as much of a risk there. I like Chris Godwin a lot. I'm not going to have both Godwin and Evans in the same lineups most likely because they are pretty negatively correlated.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to stack this pass game up, I don't see why you can't go Godwin Brown or Evans Brown in a couple lineups and do all right. I don't think that's going to be as negatively correlated because it looked like he was getting Tom Brady was really just getting the ball to Godwin and Brown last matchup I watched. I think that was last Sunday.
Yeah.
So I think I think Brown's expensive, especially with Chris Godwin being just a little bit more expensive. So I'm going to try to go to Godwin as much as possible. And I honestly expect this to kind of make Antonio Brown kind of chalky, especially given like his recency bias.
Yeah.
What happened in the last game? He got targeted a decent amount, right? Like he's on the field for 50% of the snaps, like you said, and we expect him to see, some more production, more output. So I can understand why people would go that way. But, pay up a little bit for someone who's probably going to come in a little less owned at his price is Chris Godwin. And then if you want to just keep getting crazy with it, I don't expect Mike Evans to be too crazy chalk in comparison to Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Just given the massive price increase off those, off of Antonio Brown. So I'm going to have exposure to all these guys, mostly Evans and Godwin. And then I might sprinkle in some Brown depending on where ownership lands. But the rest of these guys, Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson, Justin Watson, whoever else you have in your player pool, I'd probably just take them out. Personally, if you're running like 150 max, you can throw in a couple with Tyler Johnson or Scotty Miller, but I'm not going to be doing that. I run 20 max, so we're gonna keep it kind of tight on the back end of this wide receiver pool.
Exactly. I might consider one lineup with Scotty Miller at this point, just a random play. that he might go his way at $1,400. It's worth it. But for me, Antonio Brown at 7,800. I know he had, what did he have last week? He had 13 fantasy points. That's not going to get it done at 7,800. I feel like for whatever reason he was at 7,400, then he was at 7K flat. He needs to be on this team. He needs to be in the fives for me to play him. That's just me. So I don't want to spend up to get him when I can just plug in Chris Godwin in every single lineup and feel a lot more comfortable about it, especially if Godwin comes in a little bit less owned than Mike Evans, which I just don't know how that's going to work out. To me, it feels like Godwin is going to be higher owned because his projections are coming in about 3 or 4 points higher than Mike Evans, and Godwin is $600 cheaper. So to me, it's possible that Godwin might be the highest owned out of all these guys. I think Evans might be the guy that's slipping under the radar, and Evans might be a tempting captain pick because at 9K and a little bit lower projection, it's possible that he might be under owned. I think he's probably going to be in the 7-8% in the captain range. And if that's the case, I might look a lot into Evans. So we'll just have to see on that. Basically, the bottom line is Antonio Brown doesn't look too good to me at that price. He has a high upside, but we just don't know his ceiling at this point. He's a different player than he was when he was with the Steelers. It's just a simple fact. We just don't know what his ceiling is. So let's move over to the Rams. So this is always interesting trying to figure this out. You got Cooper Kupp at 9,200, he's the most expensive wide receiver on the slate, which is pretty interesting to me. If you've watched our shows before, you know our Kupp versus Woods take, but we'll just reiterate it here. You've got Robert Woods at 8,200, so he's a little bit less than Godwin. I personally would rather get Godwin, but I think Godwin's going to be higher owned. Godwin's a sexy name. Robert Woods isn't a sexy name. I think he'll be relatively owned, but at 8,200, he's a little... I feel like maybe he's a little expensive. I don't know what to think about him. But Josh Reynolds is now at 6,800. And back a couple slates ago, I'm like, why is Josh Reynolds like $1,200? Like, why is he so cheap? This guy has pretty good upside. He was... Oh, okay, so he was at 2,600 at one point this season. Then he went up to 28, then he went up to 46, then he went up to 5, and now he's at 6,800. So... Josh Reynolds at 6,800 is tempting, but I just don't know that I can get to him at that price. He's sort of middle of the road. If anything, I'll throw him in the captain. I don't know that I'll have much in flex, but him at captain, just in case if he has a 2 or 3 touchdown game, that's going to be what you need. So how do you handle these 3 options? You got Van Jefferson. I don't know if he's really worth mentioning. I might even take him off the player pool. Kupp, Woods, Reynolds. How do you handle this?
I think Reynolds is really priced up. I think he does need to be more than 2,400 or out of the 2Ks, but I think he needs to be in the 4K to 5K mark for me to be getting some of him.
Yeah.
And if he comes in super low owned because of that price tag, then there might be a little bit of interest in there in playing him, just because he does have a little bit of upside. But again, I don't know. He doesn't get involved in the offense frequently enough, like consistent back-to-back games, like that he usually requires an injury for something like that to happen. So I understand we don't necessarily want to look at last week and determine what's going to happen this week, but I mean, there's no injury, so I don't know why we would expect him to get more run. And also, they're not playing Seattle. So there's a little bit of a difference there in the secondary, right? When you're playing a shitty defense, you have more opportunities for talented third string players to do well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I can pay for him. Other than that, man, I like Robert Woods more than Cooper Kupp. I've said it more than once. But I think both are in play here, and honestly, like I don't know how much you want to get of them both in the same lineup, right? Because they are a little negatively correlated. But I mean, you can stack them up with Jared Goff and throw in Kupp, Woods. I think it's okay to lean a little bit on the Rams' offense and passing attack in this game, because they're going to need it to stay competitive. I mean, yeah, there's a good chance that they're going to get shut down because Jared Goff sucks dick. But I mean, I still think they're going to have to get
you
involved,
son
right?
of a bitch.
If if this is going to be competitive and the Rams are going to stay in it, then it has to be either their running game or their passing game, right? Unless we think their defense is going to score 3 touchdowns. And I don't think their running game is doing it, and I don't think their defense is doing it. So I think you need to take these guys and put them in. And obviously, to your point, Van Jefferson. I mean, the only reason why I would play him is because I thought he was Justin Jefferson, and I didn't know what team he was on. So that I take him out of your player pool probably, and then Simba Webster. No. Like I only wanted to say his name because it was Simba, but that's it.
Yeah. So yeah, Cooper Kupp versus Woods is an interesting situation. Me personally, I'm gonna go Woods every time, especially with Kupp being the most expensive wide receiver on the slate. You're telling me he's more than Mike Evans, and it's crazy. It's crazy that he's the most expensive guy on the slate. So if you look at his fantasy box scores here, he obviously has a relatively decent ceiling, right? We know that this guy can go off. We know that Jared Goff loves him, but he's just so sporadic. He's for whatever reason, I think he'll be one of the highest owned wide receivers, but he's so sporadic. He has a 25-point game this year, and he has a 28-point game and a 17-point game. Those are his best games, and they're spread out. Now, Robert Woods...
he's going to get the number 1 corner, dude. He's a number 1 wide receiver. He gets the number 1 corner, and the Tampa dude, like, what his name is, like, Carlton Grigsby the third. Like, I don't know, but he... I know you know who I'm talking about, but he's a pretty decent corner. He's got like 5 picks this year. He's going to be locked up on Cooper Kupp. And yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but yeah, man, I just don't, I'm not a fan of Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, and if you look at Robert Woods here, obviously we've talked about his rushing ability in the past. If he gets a 20 or 30-yard run, that's pretty big. That's what can separate him and Cooper Kupp. Those 3 extra points on a showdown slate is pretty big, especially if he has a nice little end around for a touchdown on the 11-yard line. They'd rather do that than hand it off to Darrell Henderson. We've seen it. He has 2 rushing touchdowns this year.
And you're more likely to get in one of those bullshit push passes too. So like
a little shovel pass. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. And that's a fucking passing touchdown. Like it's the most bullshit passing touchdown there is. But yeah. Take it, man. I like it.
So, look, I think that Robert Woods has a higher floor. Cooper Kupp can get you fucking 12 receptions, obviously. I just think that when he's on, he's on. When he's off, he disappears. So I'd rather go with Robert Woods, who is slightly more expensive than Antonio Brown. And I think Robert Woods is going to be kind of forgotten about in this game when it comes to ownership-wise. I just think there's so many options. I'd rather, like, most people are going to go with Kupp. Most people are going to go with Antonio Brown. They're going to go with Evans. They're going to go with Godwin. So he might be under-owned, and if that's the case, I'm going to jam him into a shitload of lineups. And with Josh Reynolds, like I said, 6,800 is way too expensive for him, but he can have a 2-touchdown game. I'm only going to put him most likely in captain because you can really get some good lineups with him at 6,800, and he'll probably be 3% owned in the captain, in my opinion. Anything else to add to this? Are you doing any groups? You said that you're not going to have Kupp and Woods in the same lineup. I think that's pretty obvious. And typically speaking, I don't like to limit that kind of shit, but like they both don't go off in the same game. That's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, and Kupp's too expensive. So if you start stacking both of them up in there, there's a lot of opportunity cost. You're not going to be able to get to some other guys. So. I don't know. And it's going to be, different building 4-stack on the offensive side of the ball without Cooper Kupp and really only running one wide receiver, not touching the running backs. Like, you might be looking at quarterback, kicker, and fucking defense or something. I don't know. But I don't have much on this, man. I think Robert Woods is probably the best play out of the group.
Yeah.
And he'll probably be close to 70% of my lineups just because I don't know if I'm going to pay that much for Kupp or Reynolds.
In my opinion, you don't have to pair these guys with Goff. Like, you just don't. This is a situation where Goff can get you 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, but 120 and 2 of those touchdowns can go to one guy. You just might not need
Do
him
you
in your
know who
lineup.
just scored a
I
touchdown?
know Le'Veon Bell just scored a touchdown right now. I might be winning some serious fucking money right now, dude. But we're gonna continue on this game. It's really it's so difficult to jump between like. Anyways, showdown slate for Rams versus Buccaneers. That's what we're doing. All right, so we're moving on to tight end. For the Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, Tyler Higbee is at 4,800. Gerald Everett is at 2,600. Higbee has been relatively disappointing this year. Maybe I'm understating it. He hasn't really done well, and at 4,800, I think it's a pretty decent price tag for him. Gerald Everett is a guy that can easily score, like not easily, but he can. If he scored 2 touchdowns in a game, I would not be surprised. And at 2,600, that might be what you need to get a good lineup. So how are you handling the Higbee versus Everett here?
Yeah, I like them both. I mean, again, at some point I have to choose someone on the offense that I'm going to play. So, because I think the Rams are going to score some points. I do think it's going to be spread out a lot. So you got to capture some of the, bullshit points, and I think you have the best chance of getting it here in the tight end position with either one of these guys, with Higbee or Everett. I like Everett more just because he has a better ceiling, right? I feel like he has more of a presence in the open field, and I mean at 2,600, it's hard not to like him.
Yeah, look at those numbers. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what we're looking at for 2,600. It's nothing crazy, but he's going to go out there and get the job done, right? I mean, again, I have to have somebody to stack up with Jared Goff because I'm probably going to try and do some 4-2 stacks with the Rams. So
yeah.
Without the running backs and only Robert Woods, I need one of these guys in there. And I think I'm going to have a decent amount of both these guys. I might come in over the field, man.
Yeah, definitely.
The Cardinals defense sucked at tight ends long before last year. So that was under Todd Bowles. So I don't know that their secondary is equipped to handle that kind of a passing attack, and especially with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp on the outside, having somebody that can split a cover 2 is nice. And I think we could see some interesting stuff out of Higbee and Everett. I like them both. I'll have a decent amount.
I mean, if you look at Everett, this is the lowest he's been since week 5. His salary is, he was in week 5 he was 1,400. He jumped all the way up to 5,200 by week 8. And for whatever reason, he's trending down in price. Now, it could just be, the last 2 weeks he's had 8 fantasy points and 4 fantasy points. So maybe he's not as sexy as a pick as he was when he had those 12 points. But at 2,400 or 2,600, if he goes off for 10 fantasy points, like, he most likely will be in the optimal lineup. For sure. And look, Higbee has upside. Last year, he crushed it. At the beginning of this year, he had a 3-touchdown game against Philly. That's against Philly. You can't really... it's probably an outlier performance. But...
they fucking suck, man.
Dude, they're so bad. But look, he's going to get between 2 to 6 targets, Higbee is. And depending on his matchup, maybe he'll have a little bit better of a game than, it's just hard because if he ends up with 3 fantasy points like he has quite a few times, you're just, those lineups are completely dead, and it's just a risk. But he's going to come in low owned because I don't think people have the balls to necessarily play him. Let's move on to Tampa Bay side of things. So you got Rob Gronkowski at 6,200. He's priced pretty good. And then you got Cameron Brate, who's priced up quite a bit to 2,200. Now, Cameron Brate scored a touchdown last week. I think he scored multiple touchdowns this year, I believe. He scored 2 touchdowns this year. I mean, last week he was $200, and that's just like, that's almost a lock. And in fact, I think on the main slate last week I had him in a couple lineups. Did you? I think you did too, right?
Yeah. I like Cameron Brate. I had a shitload of Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Obviously, on the main slate, he's not $200. But like, speaking from showdown wise, when they did a showdown slate for this particular game, he was $200. So with 7, 9, 5, 12 fantasy points, those are good price. Those are good numbers. I think it's similar to Gerald Everett. I think getting Gerald Everett or Cameron Brate in a lot of your lineups is going to help you build a pretty decent roster and allow you to get the Woods, the Godwins, the Ronald Jones, all those guys in your lineup if you're sticking in Cameron Brate or Everett. When it comes to Rob Gronkowski, he hit a touchdown last week. I think he's relatively consistent. I think him and Brady are clicking. Basically in wins, he has good outputs mostly. If you look at all his worst outputs, they're in losses. Minus Chargers win 38-31. He only had about 4 fantasy points. So how are you handling Rob Gronkowski, and how are you handling Cameron Brate this week?
I like Cameron Brate. He's priced nicely. I think he's about right where he should be because he has the abilities, catch three passes for 30-40 yards and a touchdown or two. So I it's not too ridiculously priced. He's priced about how often I would expect him to do that, I guess. So I'll have a decent amount of him. I'll be balancing it out again with probably Everett and the other fucking dude's name, right? So I'll be mixing in Higbee. I'll be mixing in these different tight ends, but these pricings on some of these guys are just nice. I mean, there's not much clear value because everything's so moderately priced. So for right now, we need to be looking at throwing in some dart throws with guys like this.
Yeah.
Gronkowski at 6,200. That's interesting to me. He's priced down a decent amount. I'm curious as to what that's going to do for his ownership, especially with him being cheaper than Josh Reynolds, right? I think that could make him one of the more chalky plays on the slate. But he has some upside. I don't think he's going to go for more than 13 or 14 points, but he's going to have probably 7 to 10 output type of night. So I don't think he's a terrible play. He might be more someone in cash specific, but this dude's old, man, and he's just a massive human being, and I don't think his body can support him anymore. Yeah. Right? I mean, these back surgeries that he's having since he was fucking 16, right? He's like 39 now, right? We need to keep in mind what's going on.
I think he's like 32, which is really interesting. But like he looks like he's 39. His body, he looks like he was built in a fucking lab. Like all that gear he's got
Amari Stoudemire's knees are the same thing as Rob Gronkowski's back. Let's just put it that way.
Makes sense. To me, I think Everett is the safer option over Brate. Brate's very touchdown dependent, and if you look at Brate's snap count, last week he got 38% of the snaps, while Rob Gronkowski got 84%. The week before he wasn't even playing. The week before that he is 17%. On his season average is 26% snap rate. So he's just not on the field enough. And when it comes to showdown, you need opportunity. I think his ceiling is 4 receptions for a touchdown. I think Gerald Everett's ceiling is like 6-7 receptions and a touchdown, and maybe like 30 or 40 more yards. So to me, Everett is just a better option in my opinion. But Cameron Brate can easily catch a touchdown pass and fuck everything up for you if you don't have him in a couple lineups for sure. Let's move on to. We're done. Let's move on to kickers and defense, our favorite subject. So it's a little bit interesting here. I'm not fully clear on the kicker situation. Do you have Roto Grinders up?
Yeah.
Who's the kicker for the Rams? There's 3 kickers listed here. Who do they have the kickers?
I got 0.
You got 0.
They don't have any kicker listed right now.
So just keep an eye on news, figure out who the actual kicker is. It doesn't really matter in my opinion. They're all the exact same price. They're all 3,600, so you can literally just build with whoever you want, and when the news comes out, just switch out the fucking user the IDs. But Ryan Suckup for Tampa Bay is at 4K, and then you've got a bunch of Austin McGinnis, Matt Gay, and Kai Forbath. Sounds like a weird band. Gay and Forbath, yeah.
Yeah. I think Matt Gay actually has a better distance, better range than Kai Forbath.
Yeah.
And I think Matt Gay might be the guy that they look to tomorrow night. I don't know if I think Forbath was signed in like the last 3 days or some shit. So I don't even know if he's cleared like COVID protocol and stuff like that to join a team. But it doesn't fucking matter.
Just feather him in. I mean, that's just what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you can if you want to go heavy and put him in the fucking captain, do what you gotta do. I would highly suggest not doing that, and I would highly suggest not doing double kickers. Don't get too crazy with it. Maybe if you want to do one lineup out of in your mini max with some crazy shit, then fine. But
put it in a cash game, man. Like if you want to play the kickers, just put it in a
in a tournament, I'm not usually gonna go heavy on these guys at all. Maybe 2 or 3 lineups each, all not in the same lineup. The variance is so high, it all depends on game script. Like it's not even up to them if they get a field goal opportunity. That's just the way it is.
Here's one reason why I would be interested in Ryan Suckup. I do see that the Rams defense could do enough to frustrate the offense for Tampa and hold them to field goals. So I mean, they go out and stop 4 drives and have to kick 2 30-yarders and 2 40-yarders. All of a sudden, Suckup's got some decent points at 4K. So I mean, get 3 or 4 lineups with these guys. Don't put both in, and pray.
There's not a lot of analysts to. I mean, you just can't. I mean, projecting kickers is very difficult in the first place, and in my opinion, that's why they're always over-owned, because their median projection is so much higher than Gerald Everett's, than those sort of $4,000, $3,500 players, because they just have a higher floor but a much lower ceiling. So just keep that in mind. They're not going to break the slate for you most of the time. Sometimes they can. Anything can happen. You can get Harrison Butker kicks multiple 60-yarders. That's not how it's going down tonight so far, but that can break the slate. I just don't see it happening.
Holy shit, did you see this?
No, what's happening?
Pass interference. Las Vegas is going to get the ball at the 1-yard line.
Oh, shit. Who's in? Is Booker in? Or is it Jacobs?
I don't know.
All right, we're going to find out. Let's get a Booker touchdown here. All right. So we're moving on to defense. Buccaneers at 3,800, Rams at 3K. I think both of these are in play here, actually. I actually really like their dynamic defenses. They can cause turnovers. You need sacks. You need fumble recoveries. You need interceptions for touchdowns. You need all that. You can't just have a low-scoring game and have one of these defenses in the optimal. So think about that. I think spreading them out, I'm not going to have, obviously, both in the same lineup. I just think it's going to be a little bit higher-scoring game than it's projected, in my opinion. But you could feather some. I'd rather get Buccaneers and Rams defense than the kickers. That's just my opinion on it. How are you handling this?
Yeah, I like the defense. They're cheap. The Rams are going to get some sacks. The Bucs are going to get some sacks. And again, both these defenses have the capability to take a fumble back, score a pick six. I mean, you can even see some special teams plays come out of these two teams. So yeah. I think they're both in play. Keep an eye on the line too. This is a little bit lower total than I was expecting for 2 powerhouse offenses.
Yep,
so
I agree.
If there's chance we could see a little bit more movement. If it starts going to the 46, 45-point range, I'm all over it. But I like them. They're in play.
Yeah, I think because the defenses are pretty good. They're pretty good defenses. I think that's probably why, in my opinion. All right, so we're done with the breakdown. We're going to move on to our fate of the night. Cue the sound.
What's your name? Tony! Fuck you, Tony!
Fate of the night. Ellie, take it away.
Yeah, man, I just don't want any business playing any of those running backs. I think it's too much to try and figure out.
Rams running backs, right? For our podcast listeners, Rams running backs?
Yeah. Yep. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, Rams running backs, I want nothing to do with them. The only guy that I may have any exposure to whatsoever, as I said earlier, was Malcolm Brown, and that's just because he can get involved in the passing game. I expect Jared Goff and the Rams to need to throw because, the Bucs defense is good against the run. So I'm just not for it. I don't want to play him, and I won't.
I feel you. And look, for me, it's Cooper Kupp. The main reason why is he's the highest priced wide receiver on the slate, and I think he's probably the 3rd or 4th best wide receiver on the slate. I don't see him having the ceiling in this game. Look, he could go off for multiple touchdowns and have fucking 35 receptions, obviously. But for me, I personally am just not into it. I'm not into Cooper Kupp. I'd rather go down to Woods, and I'd rather go down to Evans. I'd rather just get a lot more. If Cooper Kupp comes in at 40% or more owned, I might have 5% of him, 10%. It's possible the rest of the field feels the same way. But to me, I feel like he's a name, and he's had a lot of fantasy success in the past, and I think that that bias continues this week. That's just my opinion. All right, we're gonna move on to our Crown Their Ass segment. This is our favorite captain choice for Draftkings, and cue the sound.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
Ellie, take it away with Ronald fucking Jones.
Yeah, man. I think he's in a great spot to smash again. I really think Bruce Arians is just going to focus on establishing the run tomorrow night, playing good defense. I don't know how good the defense is going to play, but I know that this is a different team when Ronald Jones is getting involved and he's getting work early on. We saw it last week. He does have a lot of upside, and I understand that was a ceiling performance. But even, you take away that one run, I guarantee you he's still going to end up with a touchdown at some point in that game, right? So you're still not in a bad position with an 8,800. He's a nice he's kind of a nice middle of the pack guy to really start my initial builds around. Now, if I see that he starts approaching a 7+% ownership mark in the captain spot, there's a good chance I'll start pivoting out. Again, because I'm really interested in the Rams pass game a little bit. And honestly, I think Chris Godwin's an interesting captain as well. So, I think there's some flexibility tomorrow night, and I'm just going to have to pay attention to what ownership is looking like and any potential line movements. So those things are going to be important for me because right now, Ronald, RJ is my placeholder, but I think he's a good one at that.
Yeah, for sure. I think Ronald Jones, if he comes in at low ownership, he's a good play. If he comes in too high because of recency bias, I think you might have to fade him. It all depends on his ownership. I think that threshold in the flex is probably, I don't know, what do you think, 40+%? Do you think that's kind of the, 40% and then 10% in the cap, or 7 or 8% in the captain? I think that's where you kind of have to be like, all right, I got to make a decision here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's where I'll be. If that's where he ends up, I'll probably be closer to half the field. So just because I don't want to get too crazy with it. I don't think he has that much upside.
Yeah. So for me, Robert Woods, I just love his price. I love at 8,200. I think you can, if you throw him in the captain, in my opinion, there's no way he's over 4% owning the captain. There's just too many mouths to feed on this slate. And if he's in that sub 5% in the captain range, I'm going to have a ton of him because at 8,200, he's not so low that that he's going to be an obvious choice for captain. He's just middle of the road. And I really like going that route, on a slate like this where it's muddy waters on the wide receiver end, but he has a high ceiling. It still allows me to get both quarterbacks if I want and one or two other good players from the other team. Robert Woods, in my opinion, on DraftKings at PPR, he can rack up 10 receptions without even trying almost. So keep him in mind. And also, in the flex as well, I'm definitely looking at him in the flex for sure. So, Ellie, you want to build a lineup, bro?
Let's do it.
All right. Who do you want to throw in the captain?
Let's throw in my guy. I think Ronald Jones is interesting, and we've been building your captain a lot. I don't want to give away all your pro tips,
Let's do it, man. So Ronald Jones.
Jason Witten.
I know, I saw
Jason
that. It's fucking
Witten.
joke, dude. If Waller would have scored, I'd be living large right now. Fucking old ass dude. All right, so Ronald Jones in the captain. How do we want to run this? 4-2? Or you want to do a 2-4?
I'm thinking maybe 2-4, and then actually let's go 3-3. I think we're in a good spot, a good night for a 3-3, just because of where some of the ownership is going to play out. I think it might be more wise to be a little balanced in this one.
Okay, so where do you want to go next here?
I'm going to put in your boy Robert Woods.
Yeah, I like that. Do we want to throw in? Is this a one quarterback lineup? You think you want to go heavy on wide receivers?
Yeah, let's do that.
Godwin?
Godwin.
Love that. Now, do we want to have Brady? I feel like you got to have Brady here, right? Or I don't know. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, let's throw in Brady. I like him.
All right. So we've got Brady here. Now we need 2 more Rams guys. You're at 4,600. We got to go with the Gerald Everett, or we got to go with Gerald Everett, don't we? We just have to.
Yeah, I think so. I love Gerald Everett on this build.
Yeah, so that leaves us with 6,600 for, we can go either way. If we wanted to go 4-2, we could do that, but like we're trying to stick with 3-3. I think that might be a smart build. Is there anybody that pops out at 6,600 to you?
Let's see.
You got Gronk. You got both of the running backs for Rams, which I don't think we want to do. I personally don't want to do that. I mean, you could get away with Gronk here.
Yeah, I think Gronk's nice, actually. I mean, you're getting a lot of the offense. I mean, I know we wanted to go 3-3, but I don't think this is a terrible 4-2.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to pay down for 4. I mean, you could pay down for Fournette and leave a shitload on the table. You could. In fact, let's look at that real quick. This is kind of cool. Jones in the captain, Fournette in the flex. You got Godwin and Brady. Run it back with Woods and Everett. It's decent. It's a GPP large field lineup for sure. Don't play this in cash. So that's a pretty good option. I like both of those lineups. Let's do a Robert Woods lineup real quick because I want to kind of see the builds and the difference in players we can get. So Robert Woods. I want to go. Here's what I want to do. I want to go Godwin. Let's try a two quarterbacks here, and let's just see what we can do if we can fit Godwin in. All right, so you're at 4,200. So at this point, what do you think? Going with the defense? Do you want to go with Higbee? Or do we like Everett enough that we would just put him into another line?
I mean, why not go Brait in this one?
Yeah, let's do Brait. You could switch either one of these guys out, to be honest. So right now we've got a 3. We're sort of headed towards a 3-3 with Woods at captain. I think you can get away with a 3-3. So we have 6,300 again. Let's see, Gronk. So it's kind of a similar build, except for you got both quarterbacks here. So look,
right.
If you wanted to say, you know what, fuck Goff, let's just get Kupp in. You know what I mean?
Fuck off.
Yeah. So look, you got Woods and Kupp. That's going to be a lot of the offense. You got Brait, Godwin with Brady. You can run it back at 6,900. Let's see. I mean, this is extreme. I wouldn't want to do this. I wouldn't want to go Woods, Kupp, and Reynolds. I don't think there's, I don't think all those guys can make it. But 6,900, yeah, fuck it. Let's go Gronk again. See, Gronk seems to work. He seems to work with these two with the sort of upper echelon priced captains above that 8K mark. Gronk fits in nicely, and I think it's possible he might be Mecole Hardman with a catch. Just by the way. So this is a pretty good build. Look, we're not building like this and just submitting. We're finessing it. We're looking at some numbers. We're looking at ceiling. We're looking at dupes. But this is a good starting point, and it's fun to build now, so we have a good idea how our builds are going to go tomorrow when we're actually sitting down building. 90 minutes prior to lock. So, all right, Ellie. Anything else to add on this? Any roster construction tips? Anything you might want to do tomorrow to have some fun with this? How are you approaching this tomorrow when you start building lineups?
Yeah, man. Look, I think I'm just gonna come in with a fresh mind. I know we did this show, but look, I mean, when we come in to start building tomorrow night, it's that ownership projections that we're really gonna need to kind of make our decisions. So
yeah,
I'm just gonna reset, come back in, see where the leverage is, and start building that way. That's all I got, man. And hopefully it's just an exciting game. I'm just, I'm taking some of these exciting primetime games. And of course we're recording during one of the few, but I mean, we're going to catch the last of it right now. So peace out, guys. Thank you so much.
What's your prediction, by the way?
For tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Oh shit. I think it's 27. I think it's 27-24 LA.
Oh, okay, cool. That's interesting. I got probably I'm going like 31-24 Buccaneers. That's gonna be my choice. All right, guys, thank you so much. Please drop us a like. We really appreciate it. Subscribe. We're doing 3 separate showdown videos for the Thanksgiving slate, so stay tuned to that. We're gonna release that on Tuesday. Hit that notification bell and be ready for that. All right, thanks a lot, guys. See you guys later.